All right, so let's jump right into this deep dive with a story that's been making waves online. Did you know that Pornhub is no longer accessible in Florida?
Really?
Yeah, and it sparked a lot of conversation and controversy. In fact, the demand for VPNs in Florida surged by like 1,150% almost as soon as the site was blocked.
Wow, that's a pretty significant jump.
It is. It really highlights how determined people are to access content, even when faced with restrictions like this.
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder about the effectiveness of these restrictions. Are they achieving their intended goal or are they having unintended consequences?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? So to understand what's going on, we need to look at the law that triggered all of this. Florida recently passed the Online Protection for Minors Act. It's also known as House Bill 3. And basically, it requires websites that host adult content to verify the age of their users.
I see. So on the surface, it seems like a straightforward measure to protect minors.
Right. But Pornhub and its parent company, ILO, they're pushing back against it. They argue that the age verification methods that are commonly used are actually ineffective and potentially even risky.
Risky in what sense?
Well, they often involve the collection of very sensitive personal information, which raises all sorts of privacy concerns.
Ah, I see. That's a valid point.
And beyond the privacy issue, ILO also argues that these laws might actually be driving users towards less regulated corners of the internet.
So instead of protecting minors, they might be pushing them towards even riskier online spaces.
Exactly. They point to Louisiana as an example. When a similar age verification law was implemented there, Pornhub initially complied, but their traffic plummeted by 80%.
Wow, that's a huge drop.
Yeah. And their argument is that those users didn't just stop watching adult content. They simply migrated to less regulated sites, where there might be even less protection for minors.
That's a pretty compelling argument. It really makes you think about the unintended consequences of these laws.
And what's interesting is that it seems like Florida residents were kind of anticipating this whole thing. Even before the geo-block was officially in place, VPN demand had already jumped by 51% as soon as Pornhub announced its decision to pull out of the state.
So people were already preparing for the restriction?
Yeah, it shows that many users are tech savvy, and they're actively seeking ways to maintain their online access and privacy, especially when it comes to content that's considered sensitive.
It's like a cat and mouse game between users and those trying to restrict access.
And it raises the question of whether this is sustainable in the long run.
Right, because technology is constantly evolving and people are finding new ways to circumvent these restrictions.
And it's not just limited to Florida. We've seen similar VPN surges in other states like Utah and Texas after Pornhub implemented geoblocks there. It seems like this trend of restricting access to certain types of online content is gaining momentum.
It is. And it's leading to some interesting legal challenges. There's actually a case heading to the Supreme Court that's challenging the legality of Texas's age verification law.
Wow. So this could have major implications for how we approach age verification online nationwide.
Absolutely. It's a landmark case that will grapple with some really complex questions about free speech privacy and the role of government in regulating online content. The outcome could either strengthen these types of laws or potentially strike them down altogether.
It's a pivotal moment, and we'll have to see how it all plays out. But it's clear that this whole situation is raising some really fundamental questions about online access information control and the balance between protecting minors and preserving individual liberties.
It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
Definitely. And we're going to delve deeper into these complexities in the next part of our deep dive. We'll explore the potential impact of this trend on other types of online information and the broader implications for the future of the internet.
It's going to be a fascinating discussion.
Stay tuned.
It's a case that could have ripple effects across the whole tech industry. One thing that's really interesting to consider is the potential impact on other types of online information.
You mean, like, could this trend of age verification laws expand beyond adult content?
Exactly. Could we start seeing similar restrictions on accessing information about other sensitive topics, things like politics, religion, or even certain types of health information?
That's a bit unsettling to think about.
It is. It raises concerns about a potential slippery slope towards censorship.
Imagine a future where access to information is heavily restricted based on age, even if that information could be vital for certain individuals or groups.
It's a valid concern, and it brings us back to that fundamental tension between protecting vulnerable populations and ensuring freedom of information. That balance is so tricky. Where do we draw the line? And who gets to decide what's appropriate for whom?
It's a tough question with no easy answers. And the answers might vary depending on who you ask. Parents, educators, lawmakers, tech companies, everyday internet users, they might all have different perspectives on where that line should be drawn.
Absolutely. This debate is so complex and multifaceted precisely because there are strong arguments on both sides. It's crucial to consider all perspectives carefully.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. We need to find a way to balance the need for protection with the preservation of individual liberties and access to information.
And technology plays a huge role in all of this. We're already seeing tools like VPNs being used to circumvent these restrictions. It highlights the constant evolution of technology and its role in this ongoing tug of war.
Yeah, it's like a digital arms race, with both sides constantly adapting and innovating. But what does this mean for the future of the internet as a whole?
Will it become a more fragmented and controlled space? Or will we find ways to maintain its openness and accessibility while still addressing concerns about protecting minors?
Those are questions we need to grapple with as a society. This whole situation has really given us a lot to think about, especially in light of that upcoming Supreme Court case. It feels like we're at a crossroads when it comes to the future of online access and information control.
It's a crucial time for open and honest conversations about these issues. We need to carefully consider the potential consequences of our choices, both intended and unintended.
It's not just about deciding what's right or wrong. It's about finding solutions that work for everyone. Solutions that balance security and privacy with freedom of expression and access to information.
Yeah, it really feels like we're on the verge of a major shift in the digital landscape. This whole debate about age verification, online access, and freedom of information could reshape how we experience the internet in the years to come.
Yeah, I think you're right. And what's interesting is how this might actually spark innovation. Maybe this pressure will lead to more creative and effective solutions for age verification, solutions that prioritize both security and privacy without resorting to these heavy-handed restrictions.
Yeah, maybe it'll even force us to rethink how we approach online content in general. Instead of just trying to block or restrict access, maybe we can focus on creating better tools and resources for parents and educators so they can guide young people's digital experiences in a more informed and empowering way. That's a really good point. It's not just about shielding young people from potentially harmful content. It's about equipping them with the critical thinking skills and the digital literacy they need to navigate the online world safely and responsibly.
Right. It's like teaching them how to swim instead of just telling them to stay out of the water. We need to prepare them for the realities of the digital age, not try to shelter them from it completely.
Exactly. And that requires a multifaceted approach. It requires collaboration between parents, educators, policymakers, and tech companies. We need to work together to create a digital environment that is both safe and empowering for young people.
This whole situation, as complex and challenging as it is, could actually be a catalyst for positive change. It could push us to develop better solutions, have more open and honest conversations, and ultimately create a more balanced and beneficial digital future for everyone.
I agree. I'm optimistic that we can rise to this challenge. The internet at its core is a powerful tool for connection, education, and progress. It's up to us to harness its potential while also addressing the legitimate concerns that come up as it continues to evolve.
It's like we're all navigating uncharted waters together. There will be bumps along the way. But with careful consideration, open dialogue, and a commitment to finding solutions that work for everyone, I believe we can steer this ship towards a brighter digital future.
Well said. This has been a thought-provoking deep dive, and I hope it encourages our listeners to continue exploring these complex issues and engage in meaningful conversations about the future of the internet.
Absolutely. The conversation doesn't end here. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep shaping the digital world you want to see. Until next time, happy diving.